My sister, who is 45, and I, at 31, have been estranged for a decade, and our children have also missed out on knowing each other during this time. A decade ago, I found myself newly divorced, juggling primary custody of my 2 children while working a minimum wage job that barely kept us afloat. My sister offered to help cover the costs for a summer visit to her family in California, which sparked a flurry of activity on my part. I took on extra jobs and even flipped furniture to save enough for our flights and some fun activities. The anticipation of reuniting with her was palpable, especially since my parents had been inconsistent figures in my life. My sister had always been my anchor, and this trip would mark the first time she would meet my children. The visit started off well, but my oldest son, who was 4 at the time, faced challenges due to his undiagnosed autism and the trauma from our past. He struggled with separation anxiety, had night terrors, and found it difficult to connect with my sister. Unfortunately, we were already there, and staying in a hotel was not an option financially. During our stay, I received news about an interview for a dream job in San Francisco, which was a significant opportunity that would change our lives. Excited, I shared the news with my sister, who was supportive and agreed to watch my kids while I attended the interview, giving me hope for a brighter future. I borrow some of her old business attire and make my way to San Francisco. On the first day of interviews, my phone buzzes incessantly with her calls and texts. Assuming there's an emergency, I excuse myself from the interview to return her call. She informs me that my son is misbehaving terribly, hurling insults and refusing to listen to her. I offer her some strategies to calm him down, but she dismisses my suggestions, insisting instead that I abandon my trip and return home immediately. She flatly refuses to babysit any longer. Apologizing to my interview panel, I request to reschedule via Zoom and catch the next train back. When I finally arrive, I find my 4-year-old locked in a bedroom, visibly distressed and bruised from trying to escape. The others in the house inform me that he has been confined there for nearly 6 hours, and it was my sister who locked him in. My heart sinks as I realize the extent of the situation and the impact it has had on my son. I confront my sister about her actions, but she turns the blame on me, criticizing my choices regarding my past relationship and custody issues. Just then, her husband enters the room, and they insist that I need to take my children and leave for home immediately. With no funds to change our tickets, having spent my last money on train fare and lunch, I plead with them to allow us to stay a bit longer until our flight in 2 days. Instead, they begin to pack our belongings, shoving them outside. My sister offers a half-hearted apology and attempts to hug me as we climb into an Uber I can barely afford, heading toward Oakland Airport. My 2 young boys, aged 4 and 2, spent an exhausting 36 hours in the company of those experiencing homelessness and addiction while we waited at Oakland Airport. Fortunately, our airline managed to book us on an earlier flight at no extra cost. We found a spot near an outlet to keep the iPad charged, snacking on granola bars and Doritos from the vending machine. However, the situation turned chaotic when I had to keep all our luggage close after someone attempted to steal my diaper bag while I briefly stepped away for water. It was a stressful ordeal, especially for my 4-year-old, who felt responsible for the uncomfortable circumstances. He witnessed me facing unwanted advances and harsh words while trying to keep my little ones warm in the chilly airport. Once we finally made it home, I made the decision to block that individual and her family from my life, focusing on healing from both this experience and my divorce. The emotional toll was significant, but I knew I had to prioritize my well-being and that of my children. Over the years, my relationship with my mother has been strained, but we've managed to establish a somewhat stable connection. She's planning to move in with my older sister and hopes to mend our family ties so we can all spend time together. Despite the challenges, I found a way to reschedule an important interview, which ultimately led to a successful career path for me as a single mother navigating life in a high-cost city. My mother has expressed that my sister would like me to contribute to her expenses, which complicates matters further. I also have 3 brothers, one of whom is currently living in my guest house while he seeks mental health support. Given my history of estrangement from my mother, I've been cautious about rekindling relationships, especially as a single parent. We started having short visits recently, and they've gone surprisingly well. However, my mother is anxious that I might withdraw once she moves in with my sister. I proposed options for her to visit us or for us to meet somewhere fun, but she seems uninterested. My mother's desire for me to reconnect with my sister leaves me feeling conflicted, as I navigate my own feelings about the situation. At the moment, she has no interest in pursuing these options. My mother is urging me to reconnect with my sister, but I have strong reservations about it. My thoughts are clear: they likely need financial support, and while I have the means, I'm not inclined to help. The anger I feel towards my sister is still very fresh and overwhelming. Recently, I made a significant investment by purchasing a house and enrolling my 14-year-old son, who has autism, in a private school tailored for children with high intellectual capabilities. This decision has come with a hefty price tag, and I'm still in the early stages of rebuilding my relationship with my mom. We're far from being in a good place, and I'm not ready to extend that effort to my sister just yet. Reflecting on our family's past fills me with rage to the point of tears. Both of my parents abandoned us multiple times, and I never expected my sister to betray me in such a profound way. I've read about the rising issues of loneliness and mental health struggles stemming from family estrangement, but I can't shake the feeling that allowing her back into our lives would jeopardize the stability I've worked so hard to create. I'm committed to maintaining a peaceful and normal life for my family, and I'm not willing to risk that. Now to the next story: AITAH, for giving my sister an ultimatum after she refused to pull her weight and drained my savings. It's understandable to feel frustrated when expectations in a shared living situation aren't met, especially when you had high hopes for your relationship with your sister. Moving in together seemed like a wonderful opportunity to strengthen your bond, but it sounds like the reality has been quite different. You entered this arrangement with the belief that both of you would contribute equally, and it's disheartening to see that commitment falter over time. As the situation progressed, it became increasingly clear that your sister was not pulling her weight, leading to a growing sense of imbalance. The repeated instances of her consuming everything without contributing to the household expenses must have felt overwhelming. It's natural to want to address these issues, especially when it starts to impact your finances and well-being. Your attempts to communicate your concerns were met with dismissive responses, which can be incredibly frustrating and isolating. Ultimately, giving her an ultimatum may have felt like the only way to assert your needs and protect your resources. It's important to remember that setting boundaries is a healthy part of any relationship, even with family. You deserve to feel secure in your living situation, and it's okay to expect fairness and accountability from those you share your space with. Looking back at my current situation, I realize that my savings have dwindled significantly. I've been shouldering the majority of household expenses because I simply can't bear the thought of living without essential items like food and soap. When I finally mustered the courage to sit down and explain that this arrangement wasn't sustainable, her response was dismissive. She rolled her eyes and remarked, "You're better at managing money than me, anyway." This left me confused and frustrated, as it felt like she was deflecting responsibility rather than acknowledging the issue at hand. I had to be clear that I couldn't continue this way, so I laid out my terms: either she starts contributing to our shared expenses, or we would need to separate our finances completely. Her reaction was explosive. She accused me of being selfish and controlling, claiming that I was prioritizing money over our family bond. It was disheartening to hear her say that I was making her feel unwelcome in a home that I am primarily funding. The tension in our household has escalated since that conversation, and now she barely speaks to me. I never intended for things to reach this point, but I felt I had no choice but to stand up for myself and set some boundaries. I find myself grappling with guilt because I truly value our relationship and don't want to jeopardize it. However, I also recognize that I can't allow her to take advantage of my generosity any longer. It's a difficult position to be in, and I'm left wondering if I was wrong for giving her an ultimatum and trying to establish some necessary limits. Balancing compassion with self-respect is challenging, and I hope we can find a way to resolve this without damaging our connection.
Thank you for watching. Let us know what you feel about the story. Subscribe now and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story that could become your next favorite.